The Helios 300 is a very popular laptop because it's one of the best value that you can get right now. For $1,200, you're getting the sweet spot in terms of performance. It plays just about everything at 1080p Ultra with headroom to spare and very few sacrifices to the overall device. But if you want to step up the performance from a 1660 Ti to an RTX 2060 and you want something thinner and lighter, this is only $100 more at the same spec, starting at $1,600. So let's compare the differences starting with the build. This is a mix of plastic and aluminum. The screen is made of plastic, so there's quite a bit of flex. It's pretty soft and there's not a whole lot of reinforcement. However, the keyboard deck and the bottom panel are both made of aluminum with very good reinforcement. There's like a little bit of flex if you look at it on an angle, but it doesn't feel like it's lacking in any way. The hinge is a one-hand open and there is quite a bit of screen wobble, but that's just because of the way the hinge is designed. If you close it halfway and you start like tapping on it, it will hold its position, so it's tuned quite well and the screen wobble isn't really an issue if you use it primarily at a desk. The overall design is pretty clean, and if I had to nitpick on something, I would say remove the chrome around the trackpad and trade the glowing logo for a black on black logo, but it's looking pretty good so far. Let's talk about the keyboard because this is actually an area that I really like. Generally with a lot of these thin and light gaming laptops, the two most common complaints from me personally are short key travel and mushy feeling keys, so not very tactile. This has good key travel and it's fairly tactile, great layout, it's got 4 brightness levels for the 3-zone RGB backlighting, and the only thing I dislike is the position of the multimedia keys, so like volume and brightness. Having brightness on the arrow keys just means you always need to hold FN to activate them, and it's not as convenient compared to having them in the function row. But it's a great feeling keyboard, so I wouldn't put too much thought into it. It's just something to be aware of. The trackpad is good, but not great. At this price, I think glass trackpads should be standard. This is using a plastic surface, which I will admit is pretty smooth for a plastic trackpad, but frosted glass is the ideal texture. Tracking is accurate, button clicks are nice and it's fairly quiet, but the acceleration curve is just slightly too sensitive, which, just so you know, is different from cursor speed. They're not the same thing. So it's a pretty good trackpad overall, but there's some room for improvement. They're using a 15-inch 1080p 144Hz panel, super fast, high refresh rate, great for gaming, but it's quite dim. Pretty much all 15-inch 1080p 144Hz panels are the same, acceptable brightness for indoors, but if you got your blinds open and it's a sunny day, I feel like they all could be a bit brighter. Contrast is also mediocre, and for reference, I consider 1000:1 to be good for an IPS panel, and color accuracy is generally good enough to where anyone who isn't a serious artist won't be able to tell if the colors are off. Just for reference, you want the color delta E to be under 2. That's where it's indistinguishable to the human eye. I'm not really a big fan of the dim brightness and low contrast, but since pretty much all gaming laptops source the same panel from the same manufacturer, this is just about as good as you're gonna get. Speakers are downward firing. They're very average sounding, so they lack any bass. They're not very loud. You lose a bit of detail and clarity from being downward firing, but they're totally fine for YouTube videos. Now, that's after you turn off any of their tuning, which is done through the Waves Max Audio app. It sounds absolutely horrendous, and they also track your face using the webcam, and they change the left and right channel volume to mimic a 3D effect. But all it does is it just makes you think that your headphones or your cable is defective. I don't know why they're bundling this garbage when they were originally charging $1,700 MSRP for the base model, but just make sure to disable their tuning before listening to anything. You're probably going to think your headphones are broken. For ports, you have a pretty good selection. On the left, you have power, gigabit Ethernet, USB-A, an HDMI 2.0 port, separate headphone and mic jacks. On the right are 2 more USB-As, a mini display port, and a Thunderbolt 3 port. One of the major downsides of this laptop is the accessibility. Getting the bottom panel off takes a couple Torx T6 screws and some clips holding it in place, but all you get is the Wi-Fi card. If you want to swap out the memory or the storage, you need to remove the entire motherboard because they're on the back side and it's just terrible design. Thermals and performance are both great. This thing is running a 6-core CPU and an RTX 2060, which you can configure up to an RTX 2080 Max-Q. The thermals are great because there's 3 fans inside with manual fan control as well, so it's able to maintain higher boost clocks and gaming performance was really good. The battery inside is slightly above average for a thin and light gaming laptop. It's an 85 watt-hour battery, and you should expect around 6 to 6.5 hours of battery life with light use. So in terms of value, the Helios 300 is only $100 less at the same configuration, and I would say the primary reason to buy the Triton 500 over the Helios 300 would be the portability. It gets better battery life, 6.5 up from 4 hours, it's thinner and lighter, but it makes upgrading the memory and storage more difficult than the Helios 300. It's actually not that daunting to remove the motherboard. As long as you unplug the battery, you're fine for the most part. But you should get this if you want a super thin gaming laptop with some of the best thermals of any laptop, and it's especially impressive given how thin it is, and a good keyboard. Those are the 3 biggest strengths of this laptop, I would say. There's also the Lenovo Y740, which is a really good value for an RTX 2060 laptop with its own set of strengths and weaknesses, so that's also something to consider. I wouldn't say it's better or worse in terms of value, it's just another option that I would recommend checking out if you are looking for something in the $1,400 to $1,600 price range. Okay, that is the end of this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.